Hey, Jane Atkinson and Lou. We are live on Periscope. Hello, you guys.
Hey there, Jen.
Hey, Jen. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Jane Atkinson, coming to you live from Wealthy Speaker University, where we run programs to help you catapult your speaking business. We're here today with 35-year professional speaking veteran and presentations coach, Lou Heckler. Welcome, Lou.
Thank you, Miss Jane. Always a treat to be with you.
And also here with us, as you know, Jen McDonough, who's our community manager at the Wealthy Speaker University. And Jen and I and Lou are going to be together in Dallas in January 2016. And after we get to this really juicy content about 3 keys to developing an epic keynote, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Lou, I know there are like many, many important ideas with regards to delivering an epic presentation. What do you think are top 3 elements of delivering a speech that is memorable would be?
Well, thanks, Jane. I think it's not just memorable, but it's repeatable. And actually, they're the same thing. Because to be memorable is not to be, wasn't she great, isn't he funny, et cetera, et cetera. To be memorable is for somebody to be able to pass what I call the coffee pot test. The next morning, they're standing around the coffee pot and somebody says, "Did you hear that speaker yesterday?" "I sure did." "What did he or she talk about?" You should be able to go bing, bam, boom. So the 3 things I think get you there are, number 1, a fantastic opening. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Okay. Secondly, really capturing your authentic voice, the thing that makes you different, not necessarily unique. You know, we talk so much about unique. In fact, we murder the word unique. We say it was so unique. It wasn't just one of a kind. It was so one of a kind. And I don't know that any of us is actually unique, but what we want is somebody who's different.
Authentic and different.
Somebody who's fantastically interesting and authentic and really speaks with their own voice. And we'll talk more about what voice means in a few minutes.
All right.
And then the third thing is, I think to recognize it as a keynoter, you're a provocateur. You need to provoke ideas in people's minds that will excite them and move them to action. Real different from a workshop. Workshops are great, but workshops are skill trainers. Do these 3 things. Follow these 5 steps. Do these 4, follow these 4 secrets, and you'll be perfect. In a keynote, it's more about prompting the audience to think of what those 4 things are because of how provocative you were in what you offered in a way of content.
So Jen's here monitoring our Periscope for us, and I'm trying not to focus on it, Jen, because it's distracting, and I'm trying to follow what Lou's saying and make sure we have a meaningful conversation here. Did you have something that you wanted to tell us?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep up. You 2 are very popular. We've got lots of people saying hello.
Oh, good.
Kirk and Amy and Gibran from New Orleans. Pit Crew Bob said he's excited to be on here.
Hi, Bob.
So you 2 are brilliant. She said she's commenting on Lou's, saying that it's the authentic voice that's coming through.
Awesome. So just everybody who's listening in live to us, please let us know if you have a question. We are going to have a little pause, and we'll go to Jen, and then you can ask your questions. And this is one of the things about Periscope that we're all learning is, you know, I've said, Lou, that I'm 51 years old. I have trouble keeping a thought from beginning to end. So I'm looking at this screen and seeing all the things happening. This is why we have Jen here, who is so fabulous at monitoring this thing. Okay. So
I get that. I was once 51 also.
Let's talk about openings.
Yeah.
And what you think makes an amazing opening.
Okay. I really think there are 3 things that make an amazing opening. Number 1, and this is the duh. Number 1 is duh. You have to get the audience's attention, okay? You have to have something interesting enough from the very first sentence that the audience says, "This guy's different. This woman's interesting. I ain't leaving." And they're going to put down their smartphone. They're going to put down their iPad. They're going to put down their shopping list. They're going to put down their, I don't know, USA Today newspaper or Toronto newspaper, whatever it is, and they're going to pay attention. So you get their attention. We'll talk more about how to do that in a minute. Number 2, it should preface, foreshadow, whatever word you want to use, what you're going to talk about. In other words,
tee it up.
Tee it up. In essence, if I only heard your opening and suddenly was called away,
Mm-hmm.
I would still have the essence of what you were going to talk about. I would know at least what the theme was, and we'll talk about theme in a couple of minutes too. And I would know where you were going with it. And then the third thing, which is one of the things that I think people often leave out in an opening, I believe it should give us a peek behind the screen at who you are. Not what's in the resume or printed in the program. Oh, she graduated from this university. He ran this company. That's all interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting as something that's really about you, because one of the myths, in my opinion, that we hear at CAPS and we hear at NSA and we hear all over the world is it's not about you, it's about the audience. That's not entirely true. It is about you, because you're weird. You're up there in front of the audience. You've said, I'm willing to stand up here for 45 minutes and captivate you, 2,000 people, 400 people, whatever it is.
Right.
That's a gutsy thing to do. And so people want to know, how'd you get here? Who are you? Who are you really? And that feeds into what we talked about authenticity too. So I think those are the three. Great
Nice.
opening, capture your authentic voice, provocative ideas. And in the opening, you open up with something that really gets their attention. I'll give you a couple of examples in a minute if you like.
Yes, please.
You preface your material, and you give them a peek behind the scenes at who you are.
And notice, everyone, Lou Heckler says that threes work, and he's giving us, we're talking about 3 keys today, and on key number 1, he had 3 elements. And why do 3s work, Lou? I don't even know.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it might go back to the Trinity. I have no idea. But for some reason, 3 is an easy number to remember and repeat. So if you want to be provocative and you want to be memorable and repeatable, 3 is a pretty good number.
Okay.
Also, once you get into 5 or 6 or 7, that's probably a half-day program rather than a keynote.
And would you say that one of the things we see the most of is people trying to put too much into a keynote?
I do. And I think it's because most of us have gone, I plead guilty, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have gone from being a seminar person to doing keynotes. They thought, oh, well, I'll just take my 400 bits of knowledge I know and just, squeeze my size 10 feet into my size 5 shoes.
Right.
And, no, that doesn't work.
Okay.
It's much better to say a lot about a little than it is a little about a lot.
So what do you think about, it's great to be here in Gainesville, Florida. The weather's so gorgeous here. I came from Chicago. It was snowing. And boy, I saw lots of the conference attendees at the bar last night.
Lose it. Yeah, lose it. Completely lose it.
Okay.
All that stuff has no business, I believe, at the beginning of a speech.
Okay.
You need to hit the ground running. Here's a couple of quick examples.
Okay.
Jamie Oliver gave the food guy gave a TED talk one time, and he started with, sadly, in the next 18 minutes when I do our chat, 4 Americans that are alive will be dead from the food they eat.
Wow.
You can't just say, oh, really? Thanks very much. I'm leaving.
Right between the eyes.
Right.
Yes.
Another person named James Hansen gave a TED talk started with this. What do I know that would cause me, a reticent Midwestern scientist, peek behind the curtain, to get myself arrested in front of the White House? Right? Now, if you want to get some sense of this, not only listen to good speakers, but read good books. Read the openings to good books. Some of you may know the author Pat Conroy, wrote The Prince of Tides and some other very famous books that have been made into movies. He opened The Prince of Tide with these 2 sentences. My wound is geography. It is also my anchorage, my port of call.
Wow.
My wound is geography. I mean, who starts a book that way? Now, this is a very interesting book about the former Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, a biography, and it started like this. Cassius Clay, which is what he was known, of course, years ago, entered the ring in Miami Beach wearing a short white robe with the lip stitched on the back. He was beautiful again. He was fast, sleek, and 22. But for the first and last time in his life, he was afraid.
Wow.
So This is what we mean by, an example of an opening that I use a lot when I do keynotes. So it starts like this. It's the keynote on peak performance. I won't do the whole thing, of course, the whole opening. But the first sentence is, I was named for my grandfather, and so was the street where I grew up.
Wow.
From age 3 to age 18, my address was 900 Heckler Drive. Now, right away, people are going, what did he just say?
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Jen, did you have somebody wanting to say something?
We just have congrats out to you guys for doing the Periscope interviews, and
good.
some people they're just excited out there. You're getting lots of hearts, so
Lots of hearts. That's really good, Lou. Not farts, hearts, Lou. That's a good thing.
There was an article in New York Magazine. Just to give you one other quick example. An article in New York Magazine about Chris Christie before he became a presidential candidate, and this has nothing to do with U.S. presidential elections.
Yeah.
This was just an idea of how to start a story by really capturing who this man is. Here's how it started. Every politician stands before podiums, but no figure in American public life, perhaps no one since Huey Long, inhabits a bully pulpit as fully as New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Yeah. Approaching the microphone, he tripods his elbows onto the stand, then lets his mass settle in behind him in a heavy fluid pour. He occupies a podium the way cement occupies a trench.
I love it. I love it. And Lou is married to a writer, so I know you appreciate writing.
Yes.
Right now I'm reading Shonda Rhimes' The Year of Yes. She's the creator of Anatomy.
Yeah.
And I'm actually listening to it, and her words are baffling me and blowing my mind at every turn. Just a common little element of here's how to do this. She would turn into a beautiful big story. And I'm always amazed at writers and how they do that.
Constantly ask yourself as you choose words, what's this like? How could I describe it in a 1 or 2 words where you get the whole idea? Like tripoding his elbows. You get it right away.
Right.
With the word tripod. And my wound is geography. And right away you're going, what? How could geography wound you? What we do, I think, sometimes is we take far too short of a shortcut to get started, instead of thinking of what's a way I could say this that would really cause people to sit up and pay attention. Look, let's be honest here. Are we more distracted than ever before? Yes.
Yes, we are. And that's why Periscope is something that's very unique and interesting for us. Jen has something to tell us here.
Yeah. Stalego asks, this sounds really great when you're reading it. Does it really work when you're saying it?
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think we can argue that point.
I think you have to see your keynote as a performance. Okay, it's a performance, so that each word, each pause, each use of this incredible instrument you have, which I hope you're really taking good care of, that it will be the vehicle. Let's use an analogy here. Okay, if you are reading the transcript of a court proceeding, all right, you're just reading the transcript. It'll say, Joe. How are you, Mary? Mary. Or let's see, Mary, where were you on the night in question? Mary, I was outside the window. Why do you ask? Something like that. Okay. But if you really deliver it the way it was delivered in court, Joe says, so Mary, where were you on the night in question? And Mary says, I was, I was outside the window. Why would you ask? It has a totally different meaning.
Right.
So it's, are you, and I think the key is, particularly if you open with a story, and I do think that's probably the best way to open. If you open with some kind of a story, a provocative story, you have to become the story. You have to relive the story, not just retell the story.
Okay, so we've talked really nicely about opening in terms of being your authentic self. I think this goes back to that question that just came in. whatever you decide on is going to be the first words out of your mouth. It has to feel authentic to you.
Right.
What I would say is probably not the same thing as what you would say. And so I have to really feel strongly and confidently about what it is that are going to be the first words out of my mouth.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and the deal is, look, let's just be straightforward about this. Whatever you talk about, so do a whole bunch of other people. Sorry. That's just the truth. A lot of other people talk about peak performance, about communication, about stress management, about health, about whatever it is, safety, whatever you talk about. The only reason we want to listen to you, and the only reason we will listen to you, is your authentic voice. What's your background? What are your experiences? To whom have you spoken? Where have you gathered your information? What deductions have you made? I read an article in New York Magazine a couple of years ago about Sting, the performer. He said this: if you have a recognizable sound, a vocal fingerprint, that's an X factor. It's not about whether it's good or bad, ultimately. It's how identifiable and unique it is. People may love what they hear or hate what they hear, and all the gradations in between, but they'll always know it's you.
All right.
So that's the authentic you. Who am I is based on all the decisions I've made up to this point, all the people I've been in contact with, all the relationships I've had, all the stuff I've studied, all the stuff I've messed up. So we want somebody who is not necessarily vulnerable in front of us, but we want somebody who is honest and authentic, who can laugh at themselves, who doesn't stand up there and say, and I know the answer to this, and here it is, I'm going to pontificate, but who says, look, let's be friends here for a while. Let me just tell you some stuff I've learned that I think can really help you. And, you have to have that inner belief that what you have to say is valuable, not because it's dripping out of your lips, but because you're trying to shorten their learning curve for them.
You've learned it and you've embodied it yourself, so you're able to give it to other people in a way, I think, that is the true essence of being authentic would probably not have you putting yourself up on a pedestal above anybody else, but just having a conversation with people about what you know. This is some stuff I know.
Yeah, I picture myself in one of today's popular restaurants. My table isn't quite ready. So I've gone over and in the bar area, and I'm standing not at the bar, but at one of those stand-up tables. And I've got my spouse and my friends and the other people I'm with across from me or next to me. And now we're having a conversation. I'm saying, oh, wait till I tell you something I found out this week. If I sort of picture myself in that role instead of, Mr. Brilliance, Ms. Brilliance up here in front of the room. And then I speak to people like they're real people, and I speak to them in my real voice. Because they know me. They know me. They know if I start to get to be pompous, they're like, hey, Lou, dial it back here, kid.
Go dine over there.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Jen, did you have another comment there?
Yeah, we had want to ask if we can turn off the hearts. No, Periscope is all about hearts. So keep sending them in.
Sorry, that's not us. We're not making them.
Kathy Piper was saying about how, being human and authentic is really what it's all about. Lou, do you think as speakers, what are some of the things that you see them making mistakes on? Is it coming out and pretending to be
That's a good question.
Probably perfect?
Yeah, I think it's emulating somebody else instead of being your real self. It's what we said earlier. It's trying to get too much information in a very short period of time, and it's not asking this question. These two questions: are the ideas I'm giving people big enough, and are they small enough? Okay. Are they big enough? Is what I'm talking about, does it represent something that's pretty close to a universal truth, or something that would pass the truth test? Is it big enough? Is it something that will make a difference in people's lives if they look at it in a bigger perspective?
So then from a relevance perspective, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it small enough? Is it if I have in my audience, let's say that I'm speaking to an appliance dealers association, okay? That means I have somebody in there who probably has 10 outlets in a major metropolitan area, and somebody who runs a mom and pop appliance store in a relatively small community.
Right.
Is it small enough that no matter what I say, everybody can latch onto it and say, you know what, we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
We could make that happen in our place. Does it really relate to the common man or woman? And yet, does it have a universality to it? I had a when I was in the military many years ago and was getting out, I had a job lined up where I was going to have a lot of people working for me, which I'd never had before. And one of my colleagues said to me, how are you feeling? And I said, well, I'm feeling scared. And he said, well, if you ain't scared, it ain't big enough for you. Hmm. Now, see, that's kind of a big concept, isn't it? And it's also a fresh way to say, if you don't take a risk, if you don't stretch, if you don't go outside the box, or all these other things that everybody else says, but now I've got a fresh way to say it because it just came out of somebody's authentic voice. I was an Army guy. He was a Marine, so he knew what it was like to be scared. And I was an instructor. He'd been a combat guy. So it gives it, I think, a different kind of perspective when you can use and so what I would say to your listeners and your viewers is, look at the concepts that you want to talk about. Maybe you look at Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, but don't talk about 10,000 hours because everybody uses that. Who is it in your life whom you've experienced, who has put in so much time and so much effort and so much guts to get something to the point where it's great at what they do? Ask them, what's your secret? And you'll get a so much better, fresher answer, and it'll be uniquely yours because they just said it right to you. And it won't sound like everybody else.
Right. And that's so huge in our industry. There's a lot of stories that we might hear from various people. You have to be really careful. But when you ripped your own story from what happened in the backyard a couple of days ago when you were raking leaves, then you know that story is going to be uniquely yours. And there's no danger of somebody else on the conference telling the same story, because that makes everybody look bad, doesn't it? It doesn't even matter, if it's your story uniquely or not.
It does. It does. Yeah, that's very important. And I think that does kind of lead us to this third notion about provocative ideas.
Yes.
Okay. I think the analogy I give people when I coach them is this. If, let's say, Jane, you and I go to hear Jen speak at a workshop, okay? We work in the same office. Just see Jen speak at a workshop. We're probably driving back home now, and you're saying to me, well, what did you think about that? And I'm saying, well, I think those 3 ideas she had are perfect. Let's do that. She gave us a prescription. Let's just go ahead and cash it in. If instead you and I have gone to a keynote that she does, now we're driving home and I say to you, what do you think about what she just said?
Your brain is swirling.
Yeah, I think you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of 100 things. I'm thinking of a dozen things. She's really sort of like poked me in the brain. And so what I think is, let's go back and share what she said with our staff. And then together, why don't we create some kind of a strategy where we can use at least some of her ideas, maybe not exactly what she said, but that one story she told about that experience she had on that dock one time. I think we could use that to teach our people about customer service too, or whatever.
Right.
And so you want to look for content that deals in big ideas. It's more strategic than it is tactical. It's more provocative than it is prescriptive.
So what we're saying is the difference between, your longer workshops and a keynote is higher level ideas.
Yes.
Thought-provoking ideas, kind of at the 10,000 foot level, rather than getting into the lists and takeaways. Now, today's keynote are, Jen, I'm going to have to, I don't know how many minutes, but I just got a message from Zoom that I'm going to be up or something like that.
Yeah, 10 minutes. It said 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Today's keynotes, you were saying.
Today's keynotes, they're saying, give us takeaways. They really want things to go. So address that for us, will you please?
Well, I think what you want to do is you want to have content, but you want to have it also be memorable and repeatable. Let me give you an example. This past week, I was working with someone who was getting ready to give a talk about just ways to relate better to employees, okay?
Right.
And so he gave me a lot of information he wanted to talk about. I said, well, let's boil it down to like the real essence of what it is. I said, well, to me, you're talking about caring, you're talking about connecting, and you're talking about committing. Now, it's alliterative, it's easy to remember, it's something at the coffee pot the next day somebody can say.
Right.
But also, under each of those, you then go back to those and say, okay, well, what's the essence of caring? What would be a great story I could tell that would illustrate that? Or maybe I could cite a source in yesterday's Wall Street Journal or last week's Fortune magazine or whatever. Okay, then you go to connecting. Well, who are the experts on connecting? What did they say? Maybe I can bring in some of that. Or who taught me how important it was to connect? Right. Bring that person in. And then you get to committing, and you make, again, you go back, and what I say is clarify, amplify, verify, exemplify. In all your content, clarify, okay? Mm-hmm. Do I need to explain something? Do I need to define something? Amplify, tell a story, give an anecdote. Verify, cite a source, explain a massive experience you had that showed this to be true, and exemplify. Be what you're talking about, for God's sakes. Be the person who is authentic. Be the person who's caring, who's connecting, and who's committing.
Exhibit A, ladies and gentlemen, one Mr. Lou Heckler. You really do exemplify a lot of these things that we've been talking about, and certainly your authenticity is something that I know the people at home can really appreciate. Jen, what are people saying?
Well, you're just getting tons of hearts, Lou. Pink hearts and purple hearts.
I like hearts. I'm into hearts.
Good. I'm just laughing at myself because I didn't realize I was going to have like a countdown until my screen blows up. 7 minutes until we blow up. So we're fine. We're fine. I totally forgot about upgrading my account, and I did mean to do that before we started here.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, can I mention one other thing too that
please.
Been using lately? This is really a lot of fun. There's a site some of you may have already used. I like it. It's called Brainy Quote. Brainy quote, all one word, Brainy Quote. And what's great about it is two things. You can put in a topic. You can put in stress management. You can put in little things mean a lot. You can, and they not only bring up some very provocative and interesting quotes, but happily, a lot of them are from people whose name you know, which I think is really important when we're using them in a talk, because we want somebody who not only gives us a quotation that's useful, but it's also something that a person we can relate to. If you say, Joe Smith said this, or Sammy Jones, they're like, who? But if you say Maya Angelou or Oprah Winfrey or, I don't know, somebody,
right.
Dr. Michael DeBakey or something, it's a name that people will recognize. Brainy Quote. I had one here. Oh, this was Ralph Waldo Emerson, famous writer and poet, once said, a hero is no braver than an ordinary man. He's just braver 5 minutes longer. To me, that's just a lovely...
Lou's got a million of these people. Lou's got a million of these. And I also encourage people to quote themselves to make themselves the experts as well. And I come from that really from a marketing perspective.
Sure.
That they're doing things. Okay. So we've got a few minutes left. What do you think...
let's throw it out there too, maybe in the last minute. If anyone has questions on Periscope.
Yeah, okay.
We've gotten some comments from Lynn Murphy, Stoligo. This is great info, they're saying.
Lovely. Thanks.
So if you have something in the next 30 seconds, throw it out there so we can get your question.
Better be quick. People are there typing dramatically. One of the things that I want to make people aware of is that Lou is going to be a part of our Wealthy Speaker Community event on January 29th and 30th, 2016 in Dallas.
Can't wait.
We're going to be kicking off an entire year. So you don't just get the event when you sign up. You actually get to be with us for an entire year. Lou may come on one call throughout the year, but really we're talking about the Wealthy Speaker community just being a lot of learning. We're going to do coaching events every month where some of the packages include coaching with me. And I'm so excited because when Lou is there in Dallas, we're going to be doing some deep dives into the presentation skills, as well as doing some live coaching with some of the speakers who have signed up for that. And I, as you can see, oh my gosh, I'm so excited now about what we're going to be delivering in Dallas, Lou. I think it's going to be fantastic.
I've got one more. Thank you. I've got one more 3 for you. One more bunch of threes.
Yeah, please
okay.
do.
All right. Here are three questions I think all of us should answer yes to. Do you read widely? All right. Are you reading in your field and outside your field? Are you reading all kinds of things? Number 2, are you engaging everybody you meet and asking them questions? Ask the EST questions. What's the biggest? What's the funniest? What's the fastest? What's the silliest? What's the hardest? What's the dumbest? And then ask them about what they do. And the third thing, are you always learning something?
Those are good ones. Really good. Jen's got a question for us.
Ava said you rock, Lou. Lego and Lynn Murphy asked, how do we sign up? What is the URL?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Duh. If you go to speakerlauncher.com, you will see a tab called Events, and we're actually starting to roll out the promotion for it this month, but it's not live yet. But you'll see an ACC, it's Accelerate 2016 link under the Events tab, and you can sign up to get some advance notice on tickets and that type of thing. So that's all ready to go. Thank you so much for asking that question, because that was kind of dumb on my part for forgetting. Something else, Jen?
Said she tuned in late. Can she watch later? Fabulous stuff. Yes.
We have this on record. We have 2 full minutes left before we get booted off on our Zoom account. Woohoo! So, Lou, if we were to give people something to leave with, year 3 was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one final word of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Watch every performer opportunistically. Watch the ice skater. Watch the baseball player. Watch the singer. Watch the dancer. Watch your kids. Watch your grandkids if you have them. Watch people who perform. And when they move you in some way, instead of just going, wasn't that cute? Wasn't that sweet? Wasn't that funny? Wasn't that adorable? Ask yourself, why? Why was it? And is there some way I could adopt or adapt what they just did and use that in my own authentic self? Because if that moved me, I can use it to move others.
There you have it, people. Words of wisdom from one Mr. Lou Heckler, presentations guru. We bow to him. Thank you, Jen, for managing our Periscope community. We really
Thanks, Jen. Thank you,
appreciate it.
Jane.
And I can't wait to see you all. So if you missed it, go to speakerlauncher.com and click on the Events tab. You will see an advertisement for our 2016. We're going to be in Dallas on January 29th and 30th. And so go ahead and save the date right now, and we'll be introducing and rolling out more information about advanced tickets on that website. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
We're in under the wire.